Hi, I'm Scott Campbell from Solve 3D.
I'm Kevin Miller from Solve3D.
Kevin, we've got a few ways that people can classify their point cloud data. One is to use our markup tool. The other is to use our deep learning tool and train up a model. But I understand you've got another way for us to classify point cloud data.
That's right, Scott. So we have a new feature called Classify from Aerial or orthomosaic imagery. So to do that inside of Engine, you need to have a point cloud, obviously, that you want to classify, and you need to have some orthomosaic tiles that represent to give you some context of what you're going to classify. So what we're looking at here on my screen is I have a point cloud that I ran our traditional ground filter on. That's why you see in the bottom right, we have the unclassified points being 0 and ground being 2. I can turn them on and off as you see. And we also have, if I flip this over here to the aerial view, we also have this GeoTIFF loaded of that same area. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see this kind of square boundary. That is the boundary of the point cloud, or the area that the point cloud represents. So what we want to do in this case is use the aerial tile to help identify what certain objects might be in the point cloud. So this might be useful if you did some land classification of an area, or maybe you just want to manually label some stuff. So there's a number of use cases for this. But to get to the classify from aerial function, you go to Tools, Training Classification, and select Orthomosaic. So you have a number of choices at this point. You could use our deep learning image object detection on aerial images to help create your labels and that whole workflow. We have another video for that. But in this case, I'm just going to manually do some labels, and I've actually did this before. So I'm just going to import my saved version of this. You see I have some 4 classes here. I'm just going to leave these on the defaults and hit import. So in this case, I've manually labeled some buildings up top here. If I zoom in, I have buildings and vegetation, some of these storage containers, and some water. So now that I've covered this entire area worth of classes that I want to define in my point cloud, I can now click the Classify Point Cloud from Aerial button here, and up pops this other window. So I'll briefly go through these settings here. By default, it's going to show you all of the same classes that you defined in the orthomosaic training window, but this is your chance to decide how they're mapped into the point cloud. So it does its best to try to guess, like vegetation might be 4, but maybe you want to change that to 5 or 3, depending on your use case. Water 9, building 6. So you can see here the storage container, it's not sure what it is. It's going to leave it 0, but this is your chance to maybe pick a different number, like up to pick 12 here. You can always drag and drop these depending on the order that you want to apply the prioritization of those objects. So like, for example, vegetation is less important than maybe a building. If you have overlapping labels, you might want to make sure that that more important class is defined closer to the bottom, just so it gets properly classified in the point cloud.
So just to clarify, the ones on the bottom are deemed more important, especially in the case of overlapping labels, than the ones on the top.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Preserve ground. I know I have ground data in my point cloud. I'm pretty happy with it. The ground that I spoke of before that we used our traditional ground filter for. So I'm going to leave this checked. But if you uncheck this, it will, when it does the classification, it's going to overwrite anything that's classified as ground, and it will make it a vegetation, or it'll make it a building. In my case, I want to keep it, so I'm going to leave that checked. I don't want to change that classification. Then you also have the choice to whether you want to overwrite any existing files. I'm going to make a set of new files, and I'm going to put them in this point cloud path directory. It's already pre-populated here, but you can always select a new folder here if you want to select a new folder off your computer. Hit submit. And now we just got to wait. You can see a progress bar up here. and
Yeah.
it starts to count up. So it's fairly quick. It depends on the size of your point cloud, obviously, but it should only take about a minute. And then once it's finished, it will automatically load in the new point cloud into your project, to your engine project. It'll put it into a new folder here. So you can see it starting
You
to load
see
in.
building in the
Okay.
left. Yep.
So I'm just going to close out this guy. And I'm going to turn off the old project, the old point cloud. And now we're just looking at the new one. So if I flip over to this, if I scroll down here, you can now see all of those classes that I defined here.
Yep.
And if I scroll in here a little bit, you can see I have my storage containers, my ground, my buildings, and all that good stuff. And yeah, so it's all
Yeah.
been classified as I defined in those labels.
And certainly you also have water, which can be a problem to classify in point clouds too,
That's
right?
true.
So
Yeah,
this might
this.
be a great way
Yeah.
to classify water. So
Yep, that's right.
yeah, really good. Very, very useful feature. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem.